Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Monday. I hope the start of your week is going well, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Pretty horrible over here in the UK. I have to say, grey, gloomy, wet. Not a fun school run this morning, taking the kids to school. But it is a big, big week and an exciting week for us all to look forward to as well. Champions League week, Arsenal's first game in the competition at home this season. And what a game it is. PSG at home tomorrow night at the Emirates. Cannot wait to get down there for that one. Mikel Arteta has just been speaking in his press conference ahead of that game tomorrow. He's given an injury update on the likes of Calafiori, Marino, Odegaard, Ben White as well. So to look at what he's had to say about that. We'll look at what he's had to say about PSG, a club he knows very, very well. Of course, he spent some time there as a player at the start of his career. We'll look at what Declan Rice has been saying. Some interesting comments from Declan Rice, actually, on the sort of anxiety of playing for Arsenal at the moment. I think that's anxiety that we as fans know all about. Got some comments from you guys to go over as well. So let's get started, shall we? And we'll start on Riccardo Calafiori. Now, of course, there has been suggestions in the last 24 hours or so that he's suffered some sort of knee injury. He was seen in tears after the game on Saturday, and everyone's been looking at the celebrations to Trossard's third goal. You can see Calafiori sort of wheeling away, and then he goes down on the floor. He's holding his leg, gets back up, and then sort of from the kickoff, the ball comes over to him. He goes to win a header, lands on again, kind of looks a little bit awkward. He's feeling in his leg, and then the suggestions, well, no, there were reports that he was seen in tears afterwards, and Mikel Arteta has confirmed that he was emotional after the game. But speaking at the press conference today, seemed to suggest that there's nothing too serious with Calafiori, which is a good thing. By the time you're watching this show, we might have seen if he's been training or not, because Arsenal do have an open training session a little bit later on today where some of the media are going to be able to watch and the cameras are going to be there. So we'll see if Calafiori is in action. But it seems like it's nothing too serious, and the scans that have been taken place looking at Calafiori have come up with nothing sort of showing. So that's good news. That was from Team News and Ticks, obviously big friend of this channel. Is reported this morning that the scans on the knee have shown nothing serious on Calafiori. So this is what Mikel said when he asked about Calafiori and Ben White, of course, who missed the game in midweek. He's also got a knee injury. Played the 45 minutes in the second half against Man City when Arsenal were hoping not to have to use him. He then missed the weekend game. Mikel said, those are the two players who are in contention, but we have to review today. We didn't do any training session yesterday. Obviously, he's talking about Calafiori here, says was a bit emotional after the game on Saturday. Let's see how he is today. So fingers crossed. It'd be awful if Calafiori had any sort of injury that kept him out for a while or so, because he's just sort of bedding himself into the side. We've seen some really promising sides with Calafiori. Some little bits of his play as well that also need to be worked on and ironed out a little bit, I'm sure, as he adjusts to life at Arsenal, when he spends more and more time working with the coaching staff one-to-one at the training ground as well, that we'll see that side of his game improve. You know, he's a very, very young defender, so he's going to have parts of his games that he needs to improve and needs to be worked with coaches on. But I think the raw ingredients you see with Calafiori, there is such an interesting player there, I think, who could well become a huge, huge force in this Arsenal side in this Premier League. So hopefully nothing too serious. Like I said, they are training a little bit later on today, so we should get a good indication of whether he will be involved or not tomorrow night. And if he's not, and Ben White's not involved, then you start thinking, oh God, what's the defense going to be? Because if Calafiori's out and Ben White's fit, you just play Timber over at left back and play Ben White at right back. But if there is no Calafiori and there's no Ben White, then it does present a little bit of a challenge for Mikel Arteta to have to face with Tomiyasu injured as well and Zinchenko as well. So that was the latest on Riccardo Calafiori. On Marino, Odegaard, Zinchenko and Tommy, all the players who have been missing recently. You know, Mikel's press conference last week, he suggested that Marino could well be available at some point this week. He has now returned to partial training, same as Tomiyasu. But on anyone returning for this game against PSG, Mikel said, no big news. We have to review a few players, but returning players, I've got nothing to give back. So it doesn't look like Marino, Odegaard, obviously Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, any of those players are going to be fit for this game. I don't think anyone was expecting them to be fit for this one. Whether Marino has any sort of chance for the game against, who are we playing at the weekend? Southampton, isn't it, at the Emirates? We'll have to wait and see. And maybe a little bit later on in the week, in this Mikel's second press conference of the week, we'll find out a little bit more on him. So there was certainly some good news at the end of last week in terms of potential returning players injury-wise. Not quite as good news today, but we are slowly getting there. You'd hope, give it certainly post-international break, you'd think Arsenal's squad is going to be looking an awful lot stronger than it is right now. Right, moving on. In terms of PSG, this is big news ahead of tomorrow's game. Ousmane Dembele has had a very, very good start to the season. I think he's got 4 goals in the first 7 games this season, 3 assists as well. Was good in the weekend win against Stade Rennais. I think they beat 3-1. He is not, according to reports in France, you see here, L'Equipe reported it, RMC have reported it, he is not going to be playing against Arsenal. He's been left out of the squad by Luis Enrique because of disciplinary issues. They played on Friday in their league game, but they had some sort of clash, some sort of heated exchange after that game. And Luis Enrique has decided to put his foot down. And Dembele, even though he's fit, is not going to be playing against Arsenal. Mikel was asked about that in the press conference, and he kind of fudged the question a little bit. He said, look, we've just seen the news as well. I don't know if it's true, but we'll just prepare as we always do, for any sort of possibility in terms of who might be starting the game. But certainly strong reports from multiple big outlets in France that Dembele is not going to be playing. I mean, it just has to be good news for Arsenal. As I said, he's started the season well. Dembele, it's been big things expected of him this season, especially with Mbappe leaving, and he started well. But if he's not going to be involved against Arsenal, and you have to look at that as a boost for Arsenal, 100%. It's a big move from Enrique, who we know is not afraid to make big decisions when it comes to players and stepping out of line. He absolutely wields a very strong fist when it comes to his squad and what sort of disciplinary issues it's got. But yeah, big move by Enrique, big decision, risky decision, you would think. Have to say it's a big boost for Arsenal if Dembele is not involved. Now, obviously, this is a big game for Mikel Arteta from a sort of personal point of view. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of the pictures here of a very, very young, fresh-faced Mikel Arteta. Hair still exactly the same, of course. 17 years old, he made the move to PSG on loan from Barcelona. He'd never played a professional game for Barcelona. Went to PSG, had a fantastic year there, loved it. I remember speaking with Mikel at the beginning of last season. I went down to Colney. I had an interview with him, and he was talking to me about his time at PSG and just how much he values that year. It meant an awful lot to him. It really made him grow up as a player, and he appreciates the sort of risk that they and their manager took on him, taking a 17-year-old kid who'd never played senior football before and then chucking him in this dressing room full of stars of Ronaldinho, JJ Okocha, Nicolas Anelka. I mean, that's Pochettino there in that picture in the middle. There's Pochettino there, it's where their relationship first started as well. And Pochettino really took him under his wing at PSG and were kind of like the big older brother to Mikel Arteta. And so this game obviously means an awful lot for Mikel Arteta going up against a team that he has really close to his heart. He was talking about it in the press conference, said it was my first professional experience. It was an unbelievable time I spent there. I loved every minute of it. It was the platform to share an experience of a club on that side of experience that has stayed with me forever. He said, I played with unbelievable players, Ronaldinho and Nelka, Okocha, Pochettino. I wanted to stay, but I was owned by Barca and they didn't find an agreement. This is football. It shapes the character. And then he was asked about the way that Arsenal won at the weekend and the fact that kind of on the back of all the talk of a low block and all that sort of stuff against Manchester City and defensive play, and then Arsenal go and produce a really attacking display against Leicester, have 37 shots, but still have to grind out a win in the last minute. He was asked about what sort of thing that can do for a team. And he said it shapes the character and the body of the team, that they have the certainty that they can win in any context. The Champions League demands that. You can't expect to play against these teams and dominate for 95 minutes. So it demands it. You have to be really good in other phases to stay in the game, to be comfortable and always have the belief to win it. And he's right. I think the way that Arsenal won that game in midweek will give them lots of belief. You need to. The last minute winners had nothing like it for the fans, but for the players as well, for the belief it generates to be able to just keep going and being able to fall back on that sort of muscle memory of knowing that you can do it and you have done it before. We've seen this Arsenal team do it over the last couple of years. And I think it's going to be really, really important. And as Mikel says, having different ways of being able to play and be able to win games is so important in the Premier League, but in the Champions League as well. Absolutely crucial to be able to. That's why I just thought some of the criticism that Arsenal got was so pathetic after that Manchester City game. I really, really did. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but it's just the thought of you can only being able to win one way. It's such a negative thing, and I don't see why that should almost be celebrated. The fact that this Arsenal team can play defensive, if needs be, if you have a player sent off, you can fall back against arguably the best team in the world. You can fall back into that rigid defensive line and be able to see out the game, pretty much see out the game, and be very, very comfortable until a very unlucky piece of play from a corner in the last minute falls to a Man City player. So you can be able to do that, but then you can also take a game to teams. You can play out from the back. You can go direct. You can play with a high press. You can play with a low block. That's things that should be celebrated. That's what makes teams great, that you can win in different ways. And that's going to be so important for Arsenal going forward. So the whole talk about like Roy Keane throwing the dinosaurs line out there when he was talking about Arsenal and how they played against Man City, it was so ridiculous. But it was so ridiculous. I think Mikel's really right to point out the fact that you need different ways to be able to win games. And I think Arsenal can absolutely do that. And in terms of the Champions League, coming back to the Emirates, Arsenal were very, very strong at the Champions League last season at home. They've not been great away. We know that the record's not been great away from home, but the Emirates last season, they were fantastic, 100% record. So he scored loads of goals in the group stages, beat Porto in the knockout game. And then, when I say 100% unbeaten, because they did draw the game against Bayern Munich, obviously. Mikel said in terms of Tuesday, everyone is looking forward to it. We missed it for a number of years, and last year was the first time after many years that we had the experience to be able to do it. The group stage is a bit different this season. The opposition we're going to face tomorrow night is probably at the highest level that you can find in European football, but it's a great opportunity for us to see how we deal with it and how prepared we are and how we can impose ourselves in this type of context. I can't wait. I really can't wait for this game. Going to be fantastic atmosphere down there. The PSG fans are going to be loud. We know that. They're going to bring an awful lot of colour and noise, and fireworks, I imagine, are going to get smuggled into the game. And it's going to be a hell of a contest. And really interested to see how Arsenal perform against PSG, because the group stages were fairly comfortable last season. The level of opposition Arsenal had, it kind of felt a little bit more Europa League than Champions League. But going straight into it this season with the game against PSG, going to be a real challenge for Arsenal, a real test of where they are at this early stage of the season. Fingers crossed they can get the job done. And it should be a really, really special night. Right, just wanted to talk about this. I thought this was interesting from Declan Rice, who was speaking after the game on Saturday, and he talked about his sort of anxiety level of playing for Arsenal at this stage and when they're competing for what they're competing for. He said, mentally it's tough. The anxiety is through the roof. You know the pressure of playing for Arsenal. You have to win every game. And if you want to win the Premier League and the Cups, compete at the top, you need to be at your best and you need to win. Otherwise, the pressure mounts. So when that second goal went in for them, one thought is we can't lose this game. We have to keep going. In the end, it's kind of like a sigh of relief because we won and we deserve to win. That was probably the most comfortable we've been in the first half this season in terms of passing the ball, dominating the ball. There's lots of positives to take, but still so much to improve on. As the season go on, I'm sure you're going to keep seeing the best of us. And I do think Arsenal are going to improve, no doubt about that. As the season goes on, 100% they're going to improve. But I just thought the bit at the top, the anxiety is going through the roof. You have to win every single game. It's what we all feel, isn't it? It's why sitting watching that or standing watching that second half after Leicester come back into it the weekend, you were just thinking, how have we managed to do this? And because you just know that 2 points like that at home from a 2-goal lead would be such a costly thing to throw away in the context of the Premier League season, because you just cannot afford to do that. And it's just very interesting that players themselves feel exactly the same thing. And that's what they have to deal with. And they have to be able to continue to play the way they played despite that anxiety and despite that pressure. I thought one of the most promising things about that second half was, despite all the pressure that was mounting, I didn't look at an Arsenal team that looked like they were panicking. They still kept pressing. They still kept playing they wanted to play. They opened up Leicester a lot of times. They should have won a lot more comfortably. Yes, we can all talk about the missed chances or the goalkeeper having a worldie, and he did. But I thought in terms of actual how Arsenal approached that second half and how they dealt with the setback of conceding those 2 goals, I did think it was pretty encouraging, especially when you're playing under that type of pressure. Right, moving on to some of your comments now before we wrap this one up. Aaron here has been in touch. He says, looking ahead to PSG, I think Ranieri should start this game, even though we're facing the champions of France. He's proved both as a starter and as a substitute he can make an impact. PSG has a lot of injuries on their players. We need to be careful of Dembele. No, we don't. Not now. Neves or Lee, and we can definitely win at home. Ranieri showcased his potential. I think playing in the Champions League should be the next big step for him. Look, I would not be, and I said this yesterday, I would not be at all worried, disappointed, or fearful of Ethan playing against PSG. I think he's ready. I think he can handle it. I think he's shown he can handle starting the game, how he handled that game when he knew all eyes were going to be on him against Bolton. Yes, you're playing against Bolton, League One opposition, but everyone went into that game talking about Ethan Nwaneri, and he coped with that so well and put in the type of performance that he did. The cameo against Leicester at the weekend was just exceptional, and I honestly think it changed the game for Arsenal. It lifted everyone in the stadium, it lifted his teammates, and he just gave that little injection for the last 15 minutes that the game and the team really needed. And I think he could handle it against PSG. I don't think he will start this game. I'd be very surprised. I think he's got a chance against Southampton. I would definitely start him against Southampton at the weekend. I would have started him against Leicester. I think you need to be a little bit more careful because the opposition, the quality of the opposition, it just goes up another level when you're talking about PSG, even the fact that it's at home. And I think you need to be careful as well with Ethan. I think he could handle it. I'm sure he could, and I wouldn't be fearful of it. But I'd be surprised if Miguel does it. And I would probably err on the side of caution a little bit more against PSG. But I would definitely play him in the game against Southampton at the weekend. I really would. Some interesting points here in terms of everyone's kind of talking about the same topic. So I pulled a few of them together and get them included. Got Nadir at the top, says Timber and Calafiori made a very effective pair of fullbacks going forward in our last match. Great to see we have so many options in their positions now, but it raises the question, assuming everyone is fit and healthy, who would you put as left back and right back in our most important matches this season? Love your content. Cheers from Miami. Nadir, thank you very much. Then deep below says, hi Charles, with Timber taking his opportunity brilliantly while White is out injured, could we see Timber establishing himself and the beginning of the end for White as our first choice right back? And Alex says, similar, do you think Tomiyasu and to a lesser extent Ben White can become a victim of how good Calafiori and Timber seem to be? I love both Tommy and White, but objectively, Calafiori and Timber do appear to be technically better footballers. We didn't think we needed to upgrade on Ramsdale until Arteta replaced him with Raya. Could we see the same happen with Ben White? So everyone talking about the same sort of thing. What I will say is you need fullbacks. You don't just need two fullbacks. So whether this means, and I'm sure it will mean, the fact that as soon as Arsenal signed Timber and Calafiori, obviously we've had to wait an extra year for Timber because of the injury, but it was always going to lessen the amount of minutes that someone like Ben White was going to play. But I think that's got to be through design, not through necessity, if you see what I mean. I think you've got to share the minutes around, and I think it's really important. You can't just play fullbacks into the ground. So I don't think this is a beginning at the end for White. Or I think Tomiyasu is probably a little bit different because of the long-term injuries and everything like that. And but certainly in terms of Ben White, I think he's still going to be a hugely important player for Arsenal. I think he'll start plenty of games. I think he'll be on the bench for plenty of games. But I think that is a good thing. It's what the squad needs. It's what Ben White needs. So he's not having to play every single minute, game after game. And then he suffers these sort of knee injuries that he's got right now. And you have to manage him through a lot of the season like you did last year because you had no backup for him. So I think it's a good thing. I definitely don't look at it as the end of Ben White at Arsenal, or maybe he's going to be shipped out. Because if you ship Ben White out, then you've got to go and do what you've done with Ramsdale. You ship him out because he's not going to get any minutes because Raya's going to start with the game. That's not going to happen with White. White will still get plenty of minutes. So if you sold him, you'd have to go and get yourself another right back to share those minutes with Timber. And he's not going to be as good as Ben White at all. And he's not going to be able to play centre back. And so, no, absolutely not. I don't think it's the end of Ben White whatsoever. I just think it's something that's needed and the squad's needed. And I think it's a really good thing for Arsenal. A couple here on Calafiori, which is quite interesting. Mr. Matroland and Cheesy Gunner talking about it. It says, this is quite minimal in the bigger picture, but I am a bit concerned about Calafiori's positioning in the game at the weekend. Last week he was at fault for the first goal against City. You can accept a mistake, but yesterday he was poorly positioned for the chance in the first half where he managed to get back and block the shot. The second goal from Justin was amazing, but again, he was out of position and failed to recover. That's 3 big mistakes in 2 games, which at the level we want to be is not very good. For me, I'd revert back to Timber at left back with White at right back when White is fit again. And then Cheesy Gunner says, hi, Charles. I've rewatched the game and picked up that Justin's second goal was something they tried in the first half after 5 minutes. They obviously targeted the space behind Calafiori. I hope we can address this soon before other teams catch on. And this is kind of what I'm talking about at the start of the show. Calafiori, there is clear, there's clearly stuff to work on with Calafiori. He's a very, very young defender still. And the ingredients there, you can see he could be an absolute monster of a player, I think, 100%. But there is clearly some things you need to work on. He's only just arrived. And that is something that the coaching staff are going to look to iron out and will work on going forward. He's never going to be the finished article when you sign a 22-year-old from Italy and bring him straight into the Premier League. He's not going to walk in and just be perfect. But I think what we've seen from him so far is hugely encouraging in terms of what he could progress and develop into. And yes, there are these things that are quite right for people to point out. And I'm sure Mikel and the coaching staff will be sitting down at Colney in the video analysis suite with Calafiori, and they'll be going through exactly this and saying, this is where you want to be. This is what you need to do to ensure these sort of things don't happen very often. But I'm not worried about it. I just think it's a given when you've got a 22-year-old defender who's still absolutely learning his trade and has just arrived at the club. So not overly concerned about it, I have to admit, but you're absolutely right to point it out. Okay, before I go, just FPL Inside Arsenal update. There is the top 10. WAP FC, Stanis Gospard at the top. 81 points. Good week for you. No doubt got Cole Palmer sitting there captained up, basking in the glory of that decision at the weekend. So you're top with 490 points, 21-point lead over Broken FC. Got people like Dial Square, Am I Right's in there. There we land from Callum Connor leading the way. I jumped up about 450 points this week. I was about 950th in the Inside Arsenal League. I'm now up to the dizzying heights of 425th. So, yeah, happy. Good week for me in that, but still lagging behind you guys, leading the way in the top 10. So very, very well done. And congratulations to Stanis Gaspard, who is leading the way as we speak. Right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it as always. Obviously, I'll be back tomorrow as we really do start to preview that PSG game. Hopefully get a little bit of news later from training to see who is involved in that session. I'll do my predicted 11, all those sort of things. Until then, have a very good start to your week, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.